It's really great that you're doing cancer work in low and middle income countries, where I'd like to echo the comment before. I did this summer program with a lot of folks from around the world and from low and middle income countries, and they said that nobody was doing work in cancer in a lot of their countries. So it's really great that all of you are participating in that research. So I think, it's just been really fun to hear what you're doing. And now I want a cool dress from Tanzania. So I have to get this summer fellowship so I can go to Tanzania, I guess. One of my goals, actually the main goal for me here today, is to talk to you about opportunities at the National Cancer Institute. And I know that not all of you will end up at the National Cancer Institute, and some of you may not be interested at all in opportunities at the NCI. So I was trying to think about a goal that you all had that you have in common, and I decided that I would start there. Thinking about the fact that all of you are going to have to do something next, right? You're in graduate school as a PhD student or a master's student, and you're gonna have to do something after, and that's been really nice to hear that you're all thinking about this. I've seen that must have been a requirement on your slides. Good job. I think that's a really good requirement. And I wanted to, after my long years of mentoring probably hundreds of trainees at this point, just pull out like a few tidbits in thinking about what you're all going to be doing next. So my first slide is on tips for your next step. So forget about the NCI for a moment. I do think that you're already getting a lot of great mentoring, and continue to do so, get tons of advice, but follow your inner compass and do what's right for you. I think it's been really nice to hear you all talk about the things that you're really passionate about. Don't stop. Just keep listening to your heart and do that thing that's exciting to you. A lot of you have talked about your mentors and your many mentors, your in-country mentors. I'm really glad. I feel like the philosophy of multiple mentoring has really been discussed a lot in this room, and I think it's really a great thing to embrace. And making sure that you have lots of mentors, and that whoever your next mentor is, your scientific mentor, and your next position is someone whose leadership and mentoring style really works with yours. I've definitely seen situations where that hasn't been the case, or a trainee will say something like, well, I thought their style was, I would be okay with their style, and then after a couple years, they're totally not. Again, listen to your heart and really do your homework and find out what your mentor is going to be like as a mentor, and make sure that that's something that really works for you. Don't get someone who's really a control freak when that really drives you crazy. You cannot live with that, for several years. And definitely, I think this will be on everyone's radar, looking for someone who publishes a lot so that you can get lots of publications in the work that you're doing. And you have to do your homework to find that out, right? Find out just don't go into something thinking that this person's going to be great because they're doing some great science, but just make sure that they have your interests in mind in terms of your needs for publishing a lot, because that's really going to be the currency that drives your career for a while. And then making sure that you're getting scientific and career support. It's not just the science that you do. I work with my population is primarily postdocs, and some of them come and they've been doing great science, but they've gotten very little career mentoring, it may just be that their mentor didn't have a lot of experience outside of academia. And that's fine, that's totally acceptable, but just get mentors that are on that career path that you want, so that they can guide you as you head towards that career path. I work at the federal government. A lot of the people that I work with have been there forever, and they don't know much anymore about what's happening outside in industry and academia and in not-for-profit organizations. So I work really hard to connect my trainees with those opportunities. And someone that also facilitates your drive towards independence. There's a shift. At first, you're not going to be very independent, and it's going to take a while. Give it time, but really get somebody that's going to really help you get there. And doing these kinds of experiences like you've done now is really helping you for sure. Some other tidbits, that I think is critical in terms of any experience that you enter into. And we've even heard already today, like you had some expectations that weren't met, and you guys adjusted really well, which is really great. But defining expectations as you move into whatever phase you're going into is super important, and revisit those expectations regularly with your mentors. Because I always say, like, if you don't know where that bar is, it's really hard to meet or exceed it. So make sure that you know what the person's expectations are, that they know what your expectations are, that they tell you what you should expect from them. And does everybody in here know what an IDP is? I see some nodding. Okay, so I'll describe it. An IDP is an individual development plan, and they're being used more and more, and I require them for all my trainees, actually. And they're designed for people to set goals. That's basically all it is an individual goal-setting exercise. Set a plan, and you should revisit it at least once a year. But as you do that, and there's lots of tools online for you to do this as a scientist or just a generic one, but develop an IDP and look at that IDP with your mentor so that they can help you reach those goals after you set them. Look at them, again, regularly. It's a really great tool. I already talked, I think, a lot about mentoring, but a couple people mentioned here today, like I worked with a biostatistician. As epidemiologists, make a best friend that is a biostatistician. Man, they are totally worth their weight in gold. And then also, going back to that career support, make sure that as you're thinking about the career support that you need, that you're thinking about core competencies like communication, in writing, in public speaking. All of you are really great already, but keep building those skills even further. And one of my trainees who was a postdoc, and she now works in industry, I asked, she came back to visit, and I said, what's a few things that you did while you were a postdoc that were really key skills that you learned, or workshops that you took? And she said a grant writing workshop, which I was totally surprised to hear her say. But we run this grant writing workshop where we talk a lot about writing for general scientific audiences who are reviewing your work as you prepare a grant. And she said that learning to communicate to non-special audiences in her field was a key skill that she uses all the time now. Then, build your leadership skills, mentoring, teaching, so on. Make sure that wherever you go has opportunities to train in all these areas. Okay. Good. Now I'm going to go to my favorite subject. Well, actually, mentoring and giving advice is one of my favorite things to do. But I'm going to talk about now, let's go back to the NIH and the NCI. So the NIH is huge. Has anybody been there? Anyone? Yeah, you can raise. Yay. Some of you have visited the mothership. The NIH is really big. There's 27 institutes and centers. The National Cancer Institute happens to be the biggest one. Actually, 25% of the NIH on-site trainees are at the National Cancer Institute. Most of the institutes have this intramural, extramural, these two components. The extramural part is actually on site, but they're actually funding things like what you did this summer and funding institutions all over the country and in other parts of the world. The intramural piece is the part that I'm going to talk about today, and that's the training that happens on the NIH campus. Does everybody here know that there's trainees on the NIH campus? Does anybody not know? Because we all think that no one knows. Does anybody not know? Oh, okay, so all of you know, great. Phew, we got the message out. So there's lots of people. There's over 4,000 trainees on the NIH campus, and they run the gamut in terms of the types, and I'll talk about that later. At the National Cancer Institute, like I said, it's huge. There's two big pieces of the intramural program. One is the lab part, the Center for Cancer Research. The other is the population-based epidemiology part, the Division of Cancer Epidemiology and Genetics. There's also a part that sits in the extramural world, but they're sitting on a mountain of data from the things that they fund, including SEER. And that's the Division of Cancer Control and Population Sciences. So they actually have quite a few trainees also, and some of the work that you all talked about today would fit really well with their interests. I've listed underneath the interests. So CCR is I'm going to use some acronyms, sorry, we like to do that in the federal government. The basic clinical and translational research is there, and then DCEG has population science. We're going to talk a lot more about that. And then DCCPS has cancer control, behavioral health, health services, evaluation, implementation, and that kind of work. And just so you know, I actually came to NIH and I worked in CCR, then I worked in another extramural group, and then in DCEG, so I've kind of been all over the place by now. And one thing I wanted to make sure to note is that both US citizens and foreign nationals can come to do training at NIH. The majority of our trainees are actually non-US citizens. 60% of the on-site trainees are from other countries. So it's a really cool place to work for that reason. Okay, more information for this slide. There's a couple, there's a couple additional programs to know about, including the Cancer Prevention Fellowship Program and the Intramural Continuing Umbrella of Research Experiences Program. So the thing to note about those two programs is that they fund people to come into the NIH and to work in the other groups. So you don't work in their groups per se, you do your research in one of these other three groups. Does that make sense? Okay. So the special things about those two programs that I should note. One is, from the name, you can tell the Cancer Prevention Training Program is about cancer prevention. And the trainees in that program are folks that are really passionate about prevention. Some who haven't gotten a Master of Public Health degree will go and do that. Most of you guys probably wouldn't need to do that. But then they come together once a week. But their trainees, like I said, work in the other groups. So for someone who's interested in DCEG or CCR, for example, you could just come into our groups, or you could come through the Cancer Prevention Program, which is actually what I did as a postdoc. I came in through the Cancer Prevention Program. iCure, that program is really designed for people who are interested in health disparities, work in underrepresented populations. So that's potentially a perfect program for all of you to come in to NIH through that program. The Cancer Prevention Program is only for postdocs, so you have to have finished an advanced degree. iCure funds people at the post-bac, so whether you finished an undergrad degree or have a master's degree, you can come in through that program. You can actually also get funded to do your dissertation research through that program at NCI, or you can come as a postdoc through that program. Okay. Hopefully I haven't gotten too much in the weeds and tried to give, I tried to make sure to just focus on the things that would be of interest to you. One thing that's not on the slide is that we also have a Center for Global Health, and they often have like a few post-bac level or master level trainees that come in. And I don't know as much about the Center for Global Health. I've interacted with their trainees who are often looking for various research experiences, but go online. I'm sure you guys are better at that than I am, and just see if you can find out more about the Center for Global Health if you're interested in that. Any question? Feel free to, this is for you guys. Feel free to interrupt me if you have a question. Especially, I think this is kind of the big, broad slide that I wanted to make sure you all got what's going on here. Yes? Yeah, good question. The two bottom things in the boxes, they have specific application dates. For coming into any of the other three, there's not a specific application date. The Cancer Prevention Program, their applications are usually due at the end of August. So we're just getting the final application pool for that. And what happens is applications are reviewed, interviews occur in October, then people come in June. So you kind of have to have like a year plan in order to apply and come into that. iCure, the applications are usually due kind of in the winter. We're just finishing year 2 of the program. So those applications are hopefully in the coming cycle going to be due in January of 2020, and then you'll start somewhere in the summertime of 2020, end of summer. Mm-hmm. How long? Funding for a postdoc at NIH is for up to 5 years. Funding for a post-bac, so finished a master's degree or undergrad, is for generally up to 2 years, but it's extendable to 3. But we really want people to move on to the next phase of their career. So we generally try to do everything we can to help them in their training time so that they can get ready for that. But sometimes people end up staying for a 3rd year. They didn't get into medical school, or they haven't sorted out what they want to do yet. But that's generally the guidelines. 2 years for postdoc post-bac and 5 years for postdoc. And for the graduate students, it's pretty flexible, but we try to get people finish their dissertation research if they come just for that piece in 2 to 3 years. Okay? Right. Feel free to, I think my contact information is near the end, so feel free to contact me later if you have more questions. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a lot about DCEG, my favorite division. That division is really focused on population sciences research in the intramural program, and we're looking at the distribution, causes, natural history of cancer in a lot of different populations. Our division works super collaboratively. That's actually one of the reasons it's one of my favorite places to have ever worked. It's just the way we fund our research makes it such that we can work collaboratively, and we work across the division, just bringing expertise from a whole different variety of disciplines to our cancer questions that we're asking. We're really focused also on training the next generation of the science of scientists to do the work that we do. We look at cancer in a bunch of different sites. This isn't even exclusive to all the, somebody mentioned, someone was talking about endometrial cancer today. That's not on the list, but we look at that and a lot of other cancers. I think there would be an awful lot of arrows on this person if I had them all on the picture. We have cohorts and case control studies and a variety of special populations using a whole bunch of different methods, many of which you described today. And we're also, one of the things that we must do as part of the national program of science is that we must look at emerging health issues that is of interest to Congress. So that can be kind of exciting sometimes. And also kind of a pain in others. To be honest. We don't ignore the color scheme, but all the countries here that have some kind of blue are countries in which we're doing research. So it's really, I just feel so fortunate to be at the NCI because we're really working in populations around the world and hopefully making a difference in populations around the world. We're looking at a variety of risk factors. Dr. Fraumani, Joseph Fraumani, who started our division, used to say we cover the beach in terms of looking at types of cancers and different exposures. We're looking at a variety of lifestyle, environment, types of exposures, and also the interaction with genes and host factors. We use a whole variety of different types of data, including questionnaires, medical records, and so on. And as I mentioned, we're looking at genes, and we do a lot of genetic work, generating the genetic information, and then looking at the role of genetics, both in high-risk families and in somatic profiling. Our fellowships, and keep in mind that first slide that I showed you in terms of what to look for. I've been in the division for 11 years now, and I've really just tried to design the fellowship experience based on the things that I think are really important. And coming to the third bullet point, I want people have either formalized second mentors or informal second mentors. Some people have mentoring committees, kind of like a dissertation committee, but for postdocs. And there's lots of career development activities that we ensure are available to our trainees. And then going back to the top, we offer opportunities to doctoral students, the post-bacs that I described, and then postdocs. And we also have summer experiences similar to what you had. The summer interns can come, we have high school summer interns all the way through PhD candidates who might come and do a summer project. And those experiences are a minimum of 8 weeks, but you can come for a little bit longer. Some of them then segue into a longer time with us, but on the flip side, one of the great things about having summer interns is that for postdoctoral trainees, they get a lot of experience mentoring because they have opportunities to mentor the summer interns. I feel like there was something else I was going to say. I was going to tell you a little bit about, you guys had beautiful pictures. I have pictures of the great people that I work with. I was really happy I had a picture slide too. But our fellows that's our director, Dr. Steve Chanik, and Monse Garcia Closas is our deputy director. Our fellow population, we have about 110 trainees. 70% are postdocs and about 70% are women, like more than this 70% of people in this room are women today. And the rest of the other 30% of our trainee population is postdocs and graduate students. Where do our trainees go? Important to think about. Always think about the next steps. This is a 5-year representative sample, kind of a whole bunch of different things. Our postdocs will typically go on to graduate or medical school, and then our trainees will go into academic positions, federal government positions. I always say that one of the great things about coming to work at NCI is that you kind of learn about a lot of opportunities in the federal government. I remember when I interviewed actually for a postdoc, they said, "What do you want to do when you're done?" And I said, "Well, I think I might want to be in academia, but one of the things I want to do here is explore opportunities at NCI," and I certainly did that, and I never left. And then lots go into international organizations, and then private or not-for-profit types of organizations. So the variety, I try to be very agnostic in terms of what our trainees want to do. I always say, come to me, let's explore ideas. And then as I've talked about what I do, I oversee the Office of Training for our division, and it's just like the best job in the whole world. I love it, and I work really closely one-on-one with trainees. So wherever you go, make sure that you find out if there's a training office, what the training office does, and make friends with the people in the training office because they're really there to help you. These are the two wonderful women that I work with, Diane Wigfield and Kara Murray. There's my email, and exploring opportunities in DCEG. Our website's pretty easy, dceg.cancer.gov. If you're interested in working with people, no matter where they are, always contact them directly. Write them a nice email and let them know why you'd be excited to work with them, because that's the best way, I think, to figure out whether this is going to be an opportunity for you. Just a little tiny thing that I wanted to add about funding. The NCI funds research all over the place, and a great place to start is the cancer.gov/CCT website, because they have information about all the types of funding that you would be looking for now in terms of, somebody mentioned, was that you, the F99 or K00, your grant would be listed on there, and so the K99 is there, and just all of the different types of funding opportunities for training are there. And contact those program directors because they can help you be competitive for those types of grants and give you the tips that you need to get funding. I didn't want to finish without telling you, thinking way down the road, about postdoc opportunities. And I wanted to mention these three in particular because they're focused on individuals interested in work in underrepresented populations. So if you came to and these are very NIH focused. So if you came to the NIH, there's a new program for postdocs, and it's a transition type of position where you become a senior postdoc, and it helps you get into your tenure track position longer term, called the Intramural Research Scholars Program. And it's for people who are interested in training underserved populations and in working in underserved populations. And you get additional money to hire staff as a trainee that receives this award. The Earl Statman Tenure Track Program is just a general tenure track program for the NIH. That's a once-a-year search that we do. And there's a disparities-focused committee that you can apply to for opportunities to come and work looking at underserved populations at the NIH. And then finally, somebody who already is in tenure track at NIH can apply to this Diversity Scholars Program. And it's a program that's designed to get people through people who are already in tenure track, who are underserved, who just come from a background that's not your typical white male in tenure track, and that they have a lot of enrichment activities still focused on career development on tenure track, and you get also additional money for your research program. So those are opportunities at the NIH. I'm sure they exist elsewhere, so keep them in mind. I saw a hand up. Yeah, so all of these three are for people who are working at NIH, and I put them in the order of like senior postdoc, into a tenure track position, and then once in tenure track, extra money for and support for underrepresented individuals.